The Lead. Sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Lead. I am Greg Tinker, your host, and I am honored today to have former Alabama football player Griff Redmill. I guess I should include in that former Walker High School football player as well. So, Griff, welcome to The Lead.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, we're glad that you're here today, and of course, in terms of Jasper celebrities, you may not consider yourself a celebrity, but you know, if you get to play for the Crimson Tide, it doesn't matter how long ago that's been, because I think of some guys in town who are now in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, and they played for Alabama, and everybody still wants to talk to them about that. So we're going to talk about that, but before we get there, let's talk about your growing up years. You played multiple sports. At what point, you can talk a little about that if you want to, but at what point did you know football was the sport?
Well, you're right. I played multiple sports growing up. Started out, probably from the time I was 4 playing baseball, and was lucky enough to have really, really good rec league coaches at every stop along the way, which is, as a guy who's been a rec league coach, it's not something that every kid has the luxury of having. But guys like Randy McGinnis and Randy Painter, who coached our baseball teams, were great coaches and great role models for us from an early age. Ricky Allred and Bobby Gibson were our toy bowl coaches. Couldn't ask for any better coaches to teach you fundamentals. But as I grew up, got older, played baseball, football, and ultimately ended up playing basketball for Maddox Middle School, which was a great experience for me. And then as I got on into high school, I gave up baseball and actually participated in track and field, which was a really, really fun experience for me. And I owe Pat Morrison a lot for encouraging me to come do that. And it was one of the highlights of my high school career was that experience in track and field. It was something I never would have envisioned myself participating in.
Mm-hmm. So obviously high school football, and I think most people who followed your career know that you were an offensive lineman at Alabama, but at Walker High School, that was not your role, correct?
That's right.
So what was the evolution of that in terms of your high school career? Because, well, let's just talk about how the evolution of that, and then how it was that you came about playing at Alabama.
So it definitely was not where I started in terms of my football career. I don't know, you can probably remember this, a lot of folks may not, but when I was a freshman, I think I was probably 6'4" and about 140 pounds, 135 pounds. So, it didn't really embody what the look of an offensive lineman is.
Right.
So I kind of settled in on playing tight end and defensive end, and as I moved along to the varsity, that's kind of where I settled in at, and then eventually just nothing but defensive line, defensive end, and that's what I enjoyed. That's what I was good at, and so that was it just kind of evolved into that, and it was a position that suited me well, and that's what I signed with Bama to play. However, when I got there, we were at a point in time where Alabama had been strapped with hit with big time scholarship reductions due to sanctions, so we were a very, very thin squad. And so I redshirted my freshman year, which was Coach Stallings' last year. Played that whole year on the defensive line on the scout team. And Coach Stallings retired, and Mike Dubose took over. And I think the first conversation that Coach Dubose had with any of the players before the ink was dry on his contract was asking me if I'd move to the offensive line. And he said, I think you can play defensive line here, and you can play a lot of football here. But if you move to the offensive line, I think you can play now, and play early and play a lot. And my perspective was, hey, I just want to play for Alabama, and I want to do whatever I can do to do my part to help this team be as good as possible. So it wasn't a hard sell for Coach Dubose and Coach Callaway. I was pretty much ready to do whatever they wanted me to do. Now they did tell me that, kind of walked into it thinking that, okay, I'm probably going to walk into this right tackle role where there was a graduating senior the previous year. And my first day of spring training, I look at the depth chart, and they've got me behind Chris Samuels, who, if anybody remembers, Chris Samuels was a 2-time All-American, number 3 pick in the draft. So first week of spring ball, I thought, this is not exactly what I thought we were, what I was signing up for, because
right.
I'm not sure that never really played the position before, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, unseat this guy. But it was a very good learning experience for me to play behind Chris and play with him and learn the position. And then as my redshirt freshman year unfolded, had opportunity to move to guard and played a lot. And I don't know that opportunity would have happened when it did had we not been so thin on numbers. But it was a valuable experience for me to get an opportunity to play, kind of be thrown to the wolves, so to speak, in the SEC. So there was a lot of bumps and bruises and a lot of learning experiences along the way that first year. But it kind of paved the way for me to, earn my medal and have a long career there at guard.
Now, if I remember correctly, and my memory could be faulty, but you weren't recruited out of the chute by Alabama, and when you graduated, you weighed what, about 215 or 220 maybe when you graduated, Walker?
No, that's not exactly right. As a matter of fact, Alabama was one of the first recruiting letters that I got.
Okay.
I remember getting that letter in my locker my sophomore year, and I think I was as surprised as anybody because I definitely didn't look the part. But there was a coach named Randy Ross who had recruited our region for years and years, and so I think he was always kind of on the lookout for kids from the Walker County area because we'd had good luck. Chad Key was on the team in Tuscaloosa at the time, so maybe when you look down the long periscope, they're looking, well, maybe this kid could grow into this. But as the years went on, my sophomore junior year, we did not have good years. I think we went 2-8 and 3-7 my junior year, and still I had a lot of growing to do. I was tall, 6'6", but I was also playing 3 sports, so the weight and strength was kind of a slow roll. But as I approached my senior year, I thought, well, I don't know if this, much less Alabama is going to be a reality. I knew they only had 12 scholarships, but maybe the SEC is a reality. And if not, I had other 1AA options, but was 1AA at the time. But I played my senior year. I think I was 6'6", 240. And by the time I graduated, I was more like 270, 265. So that last year in high school, I had a knee injury. I wasn't able to play basketball my senior year. Wasn't able to do track and field. So I just spent all my time in the weight room, getting ready for what was ahead of me. And so after that, physically, I really started to catch up. And it was a combination of timing, where it worked out for me. I originally committed to Ole Miss when I thought it wasn't going to work out at Alabama. And there's a series of events that kind of transpired that ultimately they wound up with a spot for me kind of late in the recruiting process. And that was way before the days of guys flip-flopping all through the process. Sure. It was a pretty big deal for me, and I was more worried about what my mom and dad were going to think about me going back on my word and changing my mind. And I think probably the biggest part of that was Coach Stallings calling my dad and telling him, hey, I think we want Griff to come play ball for us. We want him here. We want guys that want to be at Alabama, and he's that guy. And he said, I think he's worried about what you're going to say about it. And I think my dad was, just so mesmerized that Coach Stallings had, had the wherewithal to call him and make the effort to kind of iron this situation out. And ultimately, my dad told me that he said, hey, you know what? This is your life, and this is your dream, and it's going to be your next 4 or 5 years. I can't stand in the way of the opportunity that you've been working for is coming to fruition. And hey, these guys, I mean, they're in the professional business of convincing these kids to play for them every day. So I'm not gonna get in the way of you carrying out your dream when you got the opportunity to do so.
I guess that's what I was thinking about, is that I knew that Alabama kind of came in there late, or the decision was made a little bit later in the recruiting process. But you're certainly glad that that Coach Stallings made the call and that your dad said what he said to you, which showed a lot of wisdom on his part. So you get to Alabama, you redshirt your freshman year, you move to the offensive line. What would you say, moving from high school to college, was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Oh, it was the physicalness of it and the speed of the game. I came from being the biggest guy on our team, probably not the fastest guy on our team, certainly, but you come to a squad with 85 guys that are as big or bigger in most cases, than a freshman coming in. They're all just as stronger, and they're all faster. And I remember the first day of varsity practice. The freshmen had already been there 2 or 3 days going through freshman drills. Of course, there was only 12 of us. So, what did we do for 3 days? Except just, pretend to have a practice.
Right.
I remember the varsity comes out and wearing nothing but headgears, and Pete DeMario and Will Friend double teamed me in a half-speed walkthrough, and I thought, what have I gotten myself into? I mean, I don't know that I can do this every day for the next 4 or 5 years. And so it definitely took a acclimation process to get used to the speed of the game and the physicalness of it at that level.
Was there any particular person, teammate at Alabama, or person, coach, that kind of came alongside you that helped you to believe that, yeah, I can do this and I can be pretty good at it?
Definitely. Coach Terry Jones, Jr., or Senior, he was our strength and conditioning coach. And yeah, as most of you know, the strength and conditioning coach is a critical part of every team at that level. They spend more time than any of the other position coaches with these guys because they're with them in the off season, the preseason, working out, and what they do with the kids and their impact on the kids plays a big part into what's going to happen to you in the fall. And I think it was my freshman year, going into my first spring, and TJ, as we called him, he was old school. He played for Coach Bryant, played for the Green Bay Packers for 8 or 9 years, and he's pretty no nonsense. And you didn't get a whole lot of pats on the back from TJ, but he pulled me aside one day and he said, Griff, you could be as good as any offensive lineman that's come through here. If you do what you're supposed to do, and that was really all he said. Because at that point in time, I'm pretty naive. I don't really know what I've gotten myself into. Definitely don't have a whole lot of confidence. And I thought, is this ever going to be anything for me?
Mm-hmm.
And him telling me that, and I thought, well, if he thinks I can do it, then I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that moment on, I just buckled down, nose to the grindstone, and tried to do everything that they told me I needed to do to be successful. And it worked out.
So you come back off the red shirt, you move to offensive line, you play a good bit that first year, and then the next 3 you're a starter, right?
That's right.
For the next 3 seasons.
Right. So my redshirt freshman year, my first year on the offensive line, like I said, I started out as Chris Samuel's backup playing tackle, and got to play in every game, the first 2 or 3 games, and then I get up one day and I've got a call from Coach Calloway, my position coach. And of course, this is before cell phones, so he's calling my dorm room. And usually, if your coach is calling, it's not good news.
Right.
And he wants me up at the complex. And so I show up, and it's myself and Will Cuthbert. And Will was a true freshman offensive tackle or offensive guard. And he told us that Will and I were going to start the Arkansas game. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start over Chris Samuels. He goes, no, you're starting at guard. So here I am, 3 or 4 weeks into the season. A brand new position for me in terms of offensive line. I've just barely learned the calls. Now I'm going to be playing at guard, which I haven't taken a snap at. A lot of people think it's the same, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
You have different calls, different schemes. And so I thought, okay, well, here we go. So started the Arkansas game, and, looking back, it wasn't because I was doing such a great job. They had some senior guys they were trying to send a message to, and but I didn't care. I was getting to play, and I was going to try to make the best of my opportunity. And so started the Arkansas game, and then I played about half of the Southern Miss game the following week. And actually, a lot of people don't remember this, but back to the scholarship numbers in our roster, we had a rash of injuries on the defensive line. So I had these 2 weeks of all the playing time I thought I could get as a freshman. They called me in, and they need to move me back to defensive line for depth purposes. So the next week versus Ole Miss, I'm back on the defensive line, getting to play, getting significant snaps against the SEC opponents. So Coach Dubose told me, when they made that move, that was out of necessity, and the long view picture for me was going to be an offensive line. So as soon as we got through the rest of the season, I moved back to guard and settled in as a starter there for the next 3 years.
So there were some highlights, no doubt, in those 3 years, an SEC championship and so forth. But as you look back over your career, is there a game or two that stands out more than any other?
There's 2 or 3 that definitely stand out. We played LSU in '98, and we hadn't lost there since the '60s. I don't remember exactly how long the streak was, but they, for the first time, they were up on us deep into the fourth quarter. And any athlete, you're always coached from the time you're small. It's never over till it's over, but this one, it was over. I mean, it felt over. And so I've got my gear unbuckled, and I think I've got my gloves Velcroed to my face mask, and we're just waiting for the clock to run out. We're down by multiple scores, and this series of events unfold. They threw the ball for some reason, and we intercept it. Big return. Andrew Zhao makes an amazing play. We get the onside kick. We run the same play to the same guy, same defensive back, tips it just like the previous. So we scored 14 points in a matter of just a few seconds. Ultimately win the game. And the whole time I played with all my gear unbuckled because you have these tight jerseys on and you gotta,
Sure,
so once
sure.
it's undone, it's like takes, people to help you get it back on. So that was 98 versus LSU in Baton Rouge. And so that was an electric experience because we got beat for 58 minutes and then, in 2 minutes, it's a different ball game and we walk away with a victory. And then obviously in 99, there were several, but that game in Gainesville, I had not watched that game probably since the film review of it. Till about 2 or 3 years ago, and I really forgot just what an amazing game that was. From a fan's perspective, not in obviously as a player participant, but we had been so downtrodden for what seemed like so long, and nobody in America thought we had a chance in that game except every guy that got on that plane headed to Gainesville, and it was just a huge game for us to win, and so much for our confidence and who we really were as a team and what we were capable of. And then, probably equally as memorable would be playing in Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium later that year. We'd never won there. We'd been close the previous trip down and lost on a fluke play. And to win down there, to solidify our trip to the SEC championship, it was such a special feeling to be part of, not just winning the game, but being a part of a team that, you started way down here, and to finish where we finished and be a part of something special. And the way it happened and came together was, it just made for a really magical experience.
Well, you've played enough to know the word chemistry gets thrown around a lot. For those who've not played sports, and I didn't play at high as a level as you did. I played junior college baseball, but that's a far cry from playing, at the University of Alabama. But chemistry really is a thing. That's not just something that gets thrown around. And what you're describing is a group of guys who were on the same page, had the same goal, and that makes it extra special when that happens.
It is, and there's no substitute for just time together, with a group of guys. And I think that's a problem in today's sports world in college with the transfer portal situation, and it's got roster turnover every year, and it makes it really difficult to build that chemistry because in '99, by the time that rolled around, we had a group of guys that we've been playing a lot of football together for 2 or 3 years, and all of our work and effort and time together, both on the field, in the weight room, from a camaraderie standpoint, it all kind of culminated in that ultimate team experience where you saw the payout on the field, on the scoreboard, and that's something that you can't replicate without lots of time together.
Well, the big star on the team, looking back, Sean Alexander, went on to have a great pro career. What kind of person was Sean with you guys in the locker room, and then as years have gone by, if you've stayed in touch with him, give us some insight into the kind of person that he is.
Well, Sean Alexander, there's not many guys like him. He's one of a kind in terms of person and character, and obviously everybody knows the tremendous athlete he was. But he was a great teammate, even better friend. A funny story about Sean. I think guys that are, just because you play at a place like Alabama doesn't mean you're a superstar. I was not a superstar, but Sean was a superstar. And so most superstars have this element of, maybe they don't have to do it every day or every play in practice. And Sean was no different in that regard. But I remember we were playing BYU one year, and Sean, he's walking through as we're all lined up and stretching. And he's walking through the offensive lineman, and he says, "I'm going to break the rushing record today." I think the record was four TDs in the game. And he's, you can tell he's made this a part of his goals for this game. And he's on and on about it, and we're kind of rolling our eyes, and it's like, okay, man, okay. So we take the field, and, this was, this was 98. Opening with BYU. New stadium expansion, so there's 90,000 people or whatever there. And so big game for us. And first series, we go 3 and out, 2 rushes for 1 net yard. Second series, 3 and out, 2 or 3 rushes for 4 net yards. Anyway, the third or fourth series, we're working our tails off and just nothing's happening. And third or fourth series will come out, and we're in the huddle, and Sean says, "I'm taking this one to the house." Now keep in mind, we took possession of the ball on our own 10-yard line, so we got 90 yards to go. And sure enough, we snapped the ball, and he takes the 90 yards to the house, and he's going nuts. He's going bananas, and he comes over there expecting a lot of accolades from the offensive lineman. And I said, hey, man, if you can just do that, just do it every play. Because we're doing it every play.
Sure.
We're trying to.
Sure.
So, but he had that special factor where when he needed to turn it on, he could turn it on. And it's something that not a lot of people can understand until you just, I mean, all you can do is sit back and watch it happen sometimes.
Well, you talked about those 3 and outs on those series, and folks at home, again, who haven't played, and they think, well, why aren't they blocking? Why can't they get 5 or 6 or 10 or 90 yards every play? Talk about some of the complexities of when you begin a game and the calls that have to be made in the defense and what may be different in a game that you've seen on film. Talk about the in-game adjustments that have to be made for that to be successful.
Yeah, well, what a lot of times what people forget is when they're asking those questions about their team is they neglect to remember that, hey, those other guys are good too. And they've been practicing for us too, and they got a game plan for us. So, on the front end, a lot of times you don't really know what they're going to give you, and you've got a basic game plan that you're going to start with, and a lot of it is you're just kind of testing the waters to see what works and what doesn't work. And so with that comes some trial and error, and you're going to have some lost leaders out there just trying to see how the defense is going to react, how they're going to respond, what kind of adjustments they're going to make. And as the game goes, if your coaching staff is doing a good job, they're taking note of those movements, and those tendencies. And so then come your in-game and halftime adjustments, and you may come back. I mean, there were times that we went in thinking we had a solid game plan, and we're going to roll with these 15 plays as our bread and butter. And at halftime, we come, we ditch it, and we go a totally different route based on what we got that we had never seen before. And so, a lot of times, folks think, okay, you're this dominant team versus this lower level team. Well, there's a lot that goes into it. They can't necessarily just bulldoze them off the ball every play because they're scheming to take advantage of whatever weaknesses you've got too. So there's always a little bit of a dance there in the early part of the game, just trying to figure out what you're going to get, how we're going to respond, and you got to balance that with do we have a package that could totally exploit this that we want to show against these guys the second or third game of the season, or what can we show that we didn't show our card or hand from down the road. So there's a lot of that goes into account.
So there's a little bit more than just lining up and blocking a guy.
Right.
A little more complicated than
Absolutely.
that. Well, you went from being a Bama fan to being a player, and now you've remained a Bama fan. Talk about how, as a young guy growing up and looking at Alabama and idolizing the guys, and then actually playing there, and now after your playing days being a fan, what's that kind of like on your level? Because the majority of folks don't get to experience that. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, it's a unique perspective to have, I think. Of course, we're lucky enough to live in a place where you've got, great rivalries in college athletics, whether it's, Auburn, Georgia, Bama, Auburn, Bama, Tennessee, and people are passionate about it. But as a player there, and I think this is only amplified over the years with with success that Alabama's had, and people become, rightfully so spoiled, for lack of a better term, and the expectation's been raised. But I can remember my time there, and my mom and dad came to every game we played in, and I can just remember hearing stories about people in the stands, totally unaware that all the players sat in one set, all player parents or player past folks sat in one section. So there was nothing that identified these folks as player guests, player parents, player grandparents, and the stories about what people would say about a kid, and I always remembered that as, hey, that's somebody's kid out, or that is a kid out there.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he looks like a grown man. He is a grown man, but it's a kid. Mm-hmm. He's 18 or 19 or 20 years old, and they're all working just as hard to do good. I mean, none of them want to do badly.
Sure.
And so I've always remembered that, and because most folks that were parents or grandparents would just kind of bite their lip and just let it roll off their back. But I always thought, if these fans realized what they were saying and the effect it's having on their family, or if that kid actually heard that, is it really that big a deal? Mm-hmm. And so I think that gave me perspective as I finished my playing career, and I'm become a season ticket holder and I'm going to the games. The camaraderie you learn to have amongst your peers that don't play on your team. One of my best friends is Cole Kublik, who played at Auburn. One of my best friends on planet Earth. Some people can't even fathom that. They don't understand it. But there's a rapport and a camaraderie with guys that that you played against. You have a shared sense of experience of what you've been through, what it took to accomplish. And at the end of the day, just because Alabama was what I wanted to do. Auburn's what he wanted to do. Why does that mean we can't be, friends and comrades? And that was what was good for me, and what he did was what was good for him. So, I think it gives you a perspective of, hey, it is just a game. It's not, it's not life or death. And so I think it made me a better fan having that perspective from that side of the fence.
So obviously you've learned some lessons or learned lessons through that. What do you take away from that as a person now, as a husband, as a dad, friend, whatever? But what do you take away from those years, and maybe prior to that, your sports career? How does that affect who Griff Redmill is today?
Well, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here across the table from me, but I really think some of the most valuable things I learned as a person and as an athlete were from those middle school basketball teams where you were my coach. That age is a critical age for an athlete or an aspiring athlete. You're coming from rec ball where, maybe you got a real coach, maybe you don't. I mentioned I was lucky to have great rec ball coaches, but you get to middle school and you got to learn to be. It's a different level. There's cuts. Not everybody makes the team. You always coached us extremely hard. We knew what to expect, and we knew how to act. And you taught us about a level of competitiveness that, as a 13-year-old kid, you haven't had to, express before. And those were lessons that, it kind of separates the men from the boys, so to speak, when it comes to athletics. There's a lot of kids that, they're, oh, this is not for me. And so they choose something else. But for me, that experience playing for you at Maddox Middle School was, I'd really never picked up a basketball. I don't know why you picked me, other than I was probably a head taller than everybody. And I thought, well, okay, maybe there's something we can do with this guy. But it was a valuable learning experience. And I took a lot of that with me to every other opportunity in every other sport that I had down the road. So just work ethic and being a good teammate and just how to handle yourself when you're a part of something bigger than yourself. How you behave when you're traveling together as a team. And those were things that you were teaching us in the 7th and 8th grade. And those are things that Gene Stallings and Mike Dubose were teaching us, 10, 12 years down the road in college.
Well, thank goodness that the goal that I had as a coach translated and helped. I'm appreciative of that, very much so. And of course, as I have said to others who've been through here that I coach, as a coach at the middle school level, watching you guys succeed was part of the joy of coaching, to be able to say, hey, yeah, I coached that guy, sitting with somebody watching TV and say, see 75 right there? I had the privilege of coaching him. And others along the way. So you finished up at Alabama. Give us a little bit of Griff Redmill after Alabama, and we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah.
What life is like for you now.
Well, like a lot of guys, I thought when I finished my college career that I was going to be playing in the NFL and make a bajillion dollars doing that. But most remember, we went out on a really sour note. I think we were preseason number 3 going into that 2000 year, and we won 3 games coincidentally. So, when you're a guy like me, you had draft projections where you thought you were going to go, and I knew I wasn't going to be a first day guy, but I thought I was going to be a 3rd round guy, and thought it was pretty solid. And really, at the end of the day, it really didn't matter how well I played because I'm a guard. It's so when it's over, and the staff is disbanded, everybody's looking for new jobs, and a guy like me, if you're Chris Samuels, you're probably going to be the number 3 pick no matter how the team looked, because you're that guy. But when you're a guy like me, there's 50 guys just like me in the draft. And so, and same goes for my comrades, Paul Hogan and Will Cuthbert, who we all played the exact same number of plays over the course of those last 3 years. And we all kind of thought we were going to fall about the same. Well, when these guys are doing their draft research, we got nobody in our corner. These guys are all gone. So, we kind of felt like we kind of got left hanging a little bit, but it's just life. It works out that way sometimes. So I moved on pretty quickly. It had been, it was a great experience, but it was a lot of work. And so I told my mom this. I said, if somebody's willing to pay me $1 million to do this, I'll keep doing it. But if not, then I think I'm ready to move on.
Sure.
So I moved back home briefly, started, job interview process, and I linked up with a gentleman in Athens, Alabama named Bernie Fielder, and we got together via mutual friends of my now wife, her family, and he was in the packaging business, and I didn't even know what that meant, but he was a huge Alabama fan, wanted to meet me, and he was a little bitty guy. He was probably 5'8", 140 pounds, and he's enamored with my size, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
not just me, but anybody that was like,
Sure.
and like I said, he was a huge Alabama fan, and so he gave me a job offer, and I really didn't even understand exactly what all they did, and because it was such a broad scope of products and stuff that knowledge I didn't have, but I really was drawn to him and the other guys and other people that worked for him, and so I said, okay, well, I'm going to do that, and so. That was my introduction to the packaging industry, and I've been doing that for 22 years now. And he's since passed and moved on, and that he was a big part of my life. He was not only my boss, but he taught me everything I know about this business.
Mm-hmm.
He was my neighbor and one of my best friends, and spent a tremendous amount of time with him over the years until he passed on. But he helped me kind of cut my teeth in this industry, and if you would have told me 30 years ago that I was going to be in packaging sales, I can definitely tell you it wasn't on my top 10 list.
Sure.
But it's where I wound up, and I really enjoy doing it, and it's what I've become good at.
Married with children.
Yes, my wife, Jillia Redmill, Jillia Langley's her maiden name. She's from Athens, Alabama. And shortly after I went to work for Bernie, we lived in Madison, Huntsville area for a while, but once we were found out we were having my first daughter, Langley, we moved back to Athens. That's where, 30 minutes down the road, where all her family is. We felt like we probably needed the support, first-time parents and all that. So Athens has been home for us for 18 years now, 17 years. So Langley she's 18. She's a freshman at the University of Alabama, her first semester. And then we've got boy-girl twins, Jack and Ann Bailey, and they're 13 in the 7th grade. So they're all doing great.
Jack gonna follow in Dad's footsteps?
No, I don't think so. He's not interested in football. He's more like my brother. He's definitely the intellectual one of the bunch. So he's totally interested in different things. He likes to draw. He's interested in writing, and he really doesn't see the relevance of sports or the necessity for it.
Right.
And I've always been a proponent of, I've never tried to push him.
Sure.
Our deal as parents, and this was the same for me growing up, is you got to do something. Okay, we're not going to do nothing. So it doesn't matter if it's a sport, if it's band, if it's volunteer, if it's your job. We're going to find what we're going to do, and we're going to do it and be involved. And that's kind of my deal with my kids. And so he kind of does his thing. His sister's into cheer, and that consumes all of her time. And my oldest is, she was a majorette, and she loved to twirl baton, did it competitively all through school. And but now she's a freshman at Bama, and she's pledged a sorority, and that's dominating all of her time with her studies and her sorority life. And but they do their thing, and everything's great.
Well, no doubt the Lord has blessed you in every way. Well, everybody is signing the lead poster here behind you, so we'd ask you to do the honor, please.
Anywhere in particular? I guess
just wherever you want to. Since you're taller, it's probably best at the top.
Up here where it'll stand out, maybe.
Who are not quite as tall, right? Yeah. Well, Griff, it has been an absolute honor, pleasure to talk with you and to get reacquainted. You and I have had the pleasure of talking some across the years here and there, and it's always a wonderful thing for me to be able to talk with you again. And so delighted that you have chosen to spend some time with us on the lead. And we wish you the best as life moves forward, raising teenagers and with a daughter at Alabama. And we just want you to know how much we appreciate this.
Well, I appreciate you guys and appreciate the invitation, and happy to do it. Happy to be here, and good to see you.
This is Greg Tinker for Griff Redmill and The Lead saying good afternoon.
The Lead, sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.